Well, thank you, friends, for coming again. We have arrived to number 12, part A. And what we are going to present in this time, do you bring seat belts today? I hope you have brought some kind of seat belts, because get hold of your chairs. What we are going to present today might challenge some of you, and it might actually open the understanding of many of you. And I hope that those that are listening will really especially pay attention to this section here. This is Living for a Very Long, Long Time, Part A. This is Part A. We still have Part B to come. Okay? Now, we are going to talk about the heart of the mind. What is the heart of the mind? In the old ancient world, they used to talk about the heart as the very center of your being. The center of your motivation, the center of your reactions, the very being, the very thing that you are. And they call it the heart. Sometimes they also call it the vows, like in the center of your vows. Or they call it the liver, the center of your liver. Now we know that that center of your heart is in the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex of your brain is the one that overrules the everything else underneath your brain and every single part of your body. So every single part of your body is ruled by the cerebral cortex, including things inside your brain. Okay? And that's where you have your mind, and you have your conscience, and you have your will. Okay? So let's go to talk about it in a minute. And we're going to break it through. If we catch these, friends, you will notice that the other 11 presentations will only make sense, will only work as they ought to, if you understand this and if you put it in practice. If you don't understand this and you don't put it in practice, what you just received with the other 11 presentations is just information that won't make you healthier. That's how important it is. The will. The will is that decision already made to do something. Willing to do something is desire to do something. Okay? And that desire to do something and that vote that you direct yourself to do something, that is called the will. And the will is also a resident of the cerebral cortex. Okay? Now, the will rules over the do or the doing. You will to do something, therefore you do something. So, the ruler of the do is the will. The will rules the do. And we are actually designed for the will and the do to be in harmony. If the will and the do are not in harmony, you are rebellious against yourself. Okay? Notice this, we are designed to do what our will tells us to do. That's our wires. We wire up to do so. So, I go and say to my son, "Son, go and do the dishes." And my son goes like this. I mean, he doesn't. I'm just illustrating. Because I explained this to him many years ago. And he's trying. But I said, "Okay, Nicholas, go and do the dishes." Now, question. Is he doing? Yes. Is he willing? No. Do you know what my son is at that very point? Rebellious. Rebellious? He is doing, but he's not willing. Have you ever heard the expression, "We do it because it's the right thing to do"? Raise your hand if you ever heard that expression. Do you know that is a concept of rebellion? That's rebellion. I don't want to do it. I do it because it's the right thing to do. And that is feeding rebellion in the individual. Now, there's something else that rules the will. See, the will is your desire to do something, but that desire to do something is inspired and pre-directed by something else. And that something else that rules your will is called the heart or your being. That concept in the ancient times, the heart of man, the root of man, who man is, rules the will. And the will rules the do. And that is wired up to be in harmony. Is wired up to do what? Be in harmony. Now, let me illustrate. The heart of man works in two switches. Negative or positive. A negative switch or a positive switch. Now, if your heart is switched to negative, will cause physical sickness. What would it cause? What would it cause? Physical sickness. I'll illustrate. Thirst. When you are thirsty, that is interpreted to the upper power, which is your heart, your mind, your very being. Oh, that's a negative. There's a negative input. It's a negative input. Now, can you imagine if you will be feeling pleasure by being thirsty? What will happen to you? You wouldn't drink and you will die. Do you get that? If you feel pleasure by being thirsty, then you will not drink and you will die. Can you see how it's a negative input? The heart, the very being, needs to rectify that. What are the arms that he uses to rectify that negative input? Well, he sends to the will a desire to drink. And it gives to the will a positive desire to drink, and the will does the doing or commands the doing, and what do? We drink. Did you get that? What will happen if you don't drink? Your heart will continue on a negative switch. Do you get it? Your heart will continue on a negative switch. If your heart continues on a negative switch, that will cause physical sickness. Did you get that? It will cause what? Physical sickness. Let me illustrate again. Hunger. Can you imagine what will happen if every time that you feel hungry, you find pleasure out of that? What will happen? What will happen if a baby is just born and he finds pleasure every time that he's not being feeding from mom or being fed by mom? It will die. It won't cry out for milk. It will just decide to die. It won't like to eat because he's finding pleasure out of it. Do you get it? So it's a negative input. It's a negative input there. Therefore, the heart needs to turn it into a positive, and it needs to actually make the will and the do line up with the same command. Because the heart wants the subject, the will and the do, to be under the same command. So what does it do? It sends to the will a command. Eat. And that command of eat is a desire. And the will wills to eat, and the do eats. Did you get it? Okay. Hatred is a negative input to the heart. Hatred is a negative input to the heart. So if the heart continues to be on the negative, it will cause what? Physical sickness. So the heart needs to rectify that by what? Forgive. Forgive. But the will rebels against it. Let's go to imagine that the will rebels against it. And the will says, I'm not willing to forgive. I am just not going to will to forgive. And therefore, I am not going to do forgive. Now, what happens now to the input? Continues to be negative. the input continues to be negative. And I'm going to tell you right now, if your input from that feeling there is negative, you can drink carrot juice until it comes out of your ears. It's not going to do what you think it's doing, because your heart is on the negative. You can be a vegetarian and run a marathon. You can buy a very expensive mattress, and you can do everything else. But if your heart, through that feeling over there of hatred, is turning the switch into a negative, you are going to suffer physical injuries out of that. Because the will does not want to submit to the command of the heart. Well, desperation is a negative input. When you are desperate and you feel that you are desperate, you are putting a negative input into the heart. And the heart needs to run on a positive, because the run continues to run on a negative will cause physical sickness. So what is the positive of desperation? Trust and hope. Trust and hope. But the heart says, well, I just don't like that. And it says to the will, I know that I need to trust and hope, but will, just don't do it. And the will goes to the do and said, I do, just don't do. And you continue in desperation, and you continue signaling to the heart what? A negative input. Friends, you can eat sprouted lentils. You can add to your smoothie maca from Peru in powder form. You can use Doles and iodine supplementation, vitamin B12 and sunshine. But if you are desperate, have hatred in your heart, and you are putting a negative input in your heart, you will suffer physical injury. Let's say I go and tell you, in order to be healthy, what about trying these green juices here? Is this going to make me healthy? I say, yeah. Well, it doesn't look like it. Oh, it must be very healthy because it looks awful. It must be very healthy because it smells awful. Now, what message is that glass of green, organic vegetable juice doing to your heart? Positive or negative? Negative. In fact, it's a sign of negative. It's a negative, and the heart is saying, don't drink it, don't drink it. That thing is going to make you sick. Now, I'm telling her that thing is going to make you better. But the heart is saying, that's a negative input. Don't drink it. Don't drink it. Don't want to drink it. Don't want to drink it. Friends, you just drank a negative input. I beg your pardon? I thought it was an organic green juice. You just drank a negative input. Your heart said, don't do it. And you just went and did it. And half an hour later, you have diarrhea and you are in the toilet. I knew it. That thing made it. And I used to say, no, I'm sure it was something else. But then I realized, yeah, that thing made it. It was the juice. The juice just gave me diarrhea. Yes, it did. How come? I thought it was good for you. Yeah, as long as it is a positive input for you. But if it is a disgusting thing that you just have to take, it's negative. And your heart hates it. And it doesn't want it. And he doesn't want it. Have you ever seen a couple, they've been together for 60 years. They were high school sweethearts. They are in the late 80s. And she dies. She dies. Now the current situation now, is it a positive input? Or this situation is a negative input to the heart of the husband? He dies in 3 weeks. Have you seen it? He dies in 3 weeks. Why? Because what is here for me to gain by staying and remaining? There's nothing here for me to gain by staying and remaining. The situation is a negative input to me, and it affected what? The physical vitality of that man. A couple just got divorced. 10 years later, she's still dragging along. He left me when I was just 35. I mean, a young girl. And he left me for another woman. How long ago was that? Well, 10 years ago. Is that situation a positive input in her heart or a negative input in her heart? Negative. So what on earth am I doing recommending vegetable juices to that lady? What on earth am I doing recommending vegetarianism to that lady? She does not need vegetables. She needs to change the switch into a positive switch before anything else can actually work in her. Do you hate anybody? Because you better drink many vegetable juices, right? To counteract, right? We drink the vegetable juices to counteract the hatred that I have for that person, because you don't know what that person did to me. But what I know is that whatever that person did to you is still considered by you a negative input. And because it's still considered by you a negative input, from all the areas in your life, you're doing the right thing. You're doing your sports, you're doing your exercise, you're doing all your stuff. But there's a negative switch in your heart that will cause you physical health issues. Now, let me tell you a story. When I was growing up, I hardly saw my father. When I saw him, he will come, and he will come drunk. I will hear him at night abusing of my mom. And for many years, until I actually, at the age of 17, I actually had to take my father away from my home. You know, it's not a nice sight for a 17-year-old boy to grab the father by the neck and throw him out of the house and grab the stick from the broom and lift up the stick of the broom against your own father, isn't it? And for many years, that was a negative input in my heart. Was a negative input in my heart. As years passed by, I discovered that I could not make that into a positive. I went through some courses of positive thinking, thinking on the lilies. Just think of positive things. I will think of positive things, but every time that I will think of my father, I will look. So I will think of positive things as long as I wouldn't think of my father. That was a negative input in my heart, and that was causing me what? Physical health issues. I was crossing the Nullarbor Plain of Australia on a push bike with my wife many years ago. We had the bikes full of water. We were just going through the service road of the Indian Pacific Railway, just in the middle of the desert. We thought there were different towns there that would provide you with water. All of a sudden, we discovered that there were no towns there, except one little town called Cook in the middle of Australia. All those little towns that were all in the map, they happened to be there because they were replacing the wooden sleepers. But years before, they changed all the wooden sleepers of the railway into concrete sleepers. Oh, they dismantled all the towns. Now you are in the middle of the desert. There's 700 kilometers of desert that way, and there's 300 kilometers of desert that way. You're carrying a very heavy bike, and you're stuck in the sand dunes. What would you do? What would this arrogant Spaniard do? Probably like most people will do. You pray. And I prayed. Get us out of here if you are there. And this Aboriginal came with a four-wheel drive, smoking marijuana, and stopped the four-wheel drive and got us out of the sand dunes. You know, sometimes the one up there didn't care about that guy smoking marijuana at that time if he could use him to save us. I arrived finally after 80 days of cycling. We continued cycling and we arrived to Perth. We went to this caravan park and I tried to pray again. And when I prayed again, I gave my heart to Jesus Christ. The third time that I prayed, the image of my Father came to my mind. And I, total conviction, called you Father and asked for forgiveness. I beg your pardon? I didn't abuse anybody. He was the one that abused us. Find his number, called you Father, and ask for forgiveness. For forgiveness? Yes. Because I said, honor your father and your mother. I never said, honor your good father and your good mother. And you grab your father by the neck and curse him to his face, you need to apologize. And I called my dad. For the first time after that conversation, the situation that happened in my life for 17 years became a positive situation. Years passed by, and I was working as a pastor in a church. And there was a situation in which a family just happened to go through the same experience as I went through when I was growing up. And those three girls didn't want to talk to anybody. When I knocked at the door, the mom said, I'll see if they want to talk to you. They were my age, roughly. And they didn't want to talk to anybody. And then I started disclosing to them on my knees. I was on the carpet, on my knees while they were sitting, what happened to me. When they saw what happened to me, they opened up. They came together. We prayed together. They opened up. And I said, you know, girls, you don't see it now. You don't see it now. But it will come a day in which God will use this very thing and experience on your life, as dramatic as it is, to bless others, as He's using me now to bless you. Therefore, I say now, praise God for what I went through for 17 years. And you know what I did with that? Look at the screen. All of a sudden, I adopted a positive in my heart. Because my heart is desperate. My heart, it runs on negativity continuously. I noticed that to a certain degree, my heart can respond to thirst in a positive way, can respond to hunger in a positive way. But hatred, desperation, revenge, no. My heart was selfish and it was incapable of put that situation to a positive. So I put His cross in my heart. His cross in my heart. And His cross in my heart made everything positive. Even the events that I went through for 17 years, even the events that my brother and my mom went through for 17 years, even those events were turned into a positive. No longer had power to diminish my health. No longer had power to make me sick because of those thoughts. And over the week, we have people coming to our consultation for nutritional consultation. And I will say, friends, that over 95% of all of them that come, what they really need is not a carrot juice. What they really need is not maca protein. What they need is to forgive their ex-husbands and praise God for that situation and ask God to use now that situation and turn it into something positive. What they need is forgive their parents and forgive their dad and mom That's what they need. They come for nutritional advice, and I have to tell them, I can't help you. I can't help you. I only have 40% of tools, and are not enough. Unless you forgive your daddy because he abused you, that will actually diminish your health. I had ladies that came to me with a prompting to overeat. And when you start talking to them, you realize the level of insecurity. I had ladies that have shared with me the fact that they decided to eat because they were abused. And they thought, if I get big, I will look detestable to his eyes, so he won't abuse me. So what am I doing trying to talk to her about diet? It's not diet. It's the heart of man. It's turning every event into a positive. I believe Sherry Peters actually is broadcast in First Light TV in New Zealand. Do you know, she was firstly raped at the age of 3 months. She was pregnant by the time she was around 10. And she delivered twins, and they died. She was raped by gang members, bikie members. She never slept in the streets. She says, oh, I hope I could sleep in the streets. But there was always a man that would see a young girl in the street and never allowed her to sleep in the streets when they could actually take her home. Oh, she was longing to sleep in the streets. She was imbued with drugs so she could be numb to the reality of her world. And all of a sudden she went through a situation in which she gave her heart to the Lord. And through His counsel, she made everything into a positive. Now Sherry Peters, broadcasting First Light TV, has a ministry in which she has been able to be used to reach hundreds and thousands of drug addicts, people that have been abused, people that are in the margin of society. And she has come to the realization that, wow, all those events in my life have now been able to be used in the positive to save thousands. So I look back at those events, and what do I have to say? They're all positive. All of them positive. I need to thank God for all those events. When you have that, friends, drink carrot juice. It will be good for you. When you have that, exercise. It will be fantastic for you. When you have that, friends, go and enjoy the sunshine. It will be good for you. But if you don't have that, first thing first, put that cross in your heart and make every single event in your life, past, present, and everything that it is to come, into a positive. Everything will work together for good. And the part B is coming, where I will tell you the recipe for that. Thank you for your attendance.